In February, every year, Sydney seems to get itself into a collective sulk. We're hot and sticky and the heat won't subside and the summer has lost its magic. The kids always have a difficult start to school. They get grumpy, find it hard to concentrate in the unending humidity. They come home sweaty and tired, desperate for the summer to be over. Poppy discusses the various injustices she's been subjected to throughout the day. Friends who won't share the frozen fruit sticks they buy at the school canteen. And the woman who runs the canteen who won't give Poppy a line of credit even though she's promised to pay tomorrow because she's forgotten to bring her money in today. Bear says all the boys in her class have come back after the summer smelling funny and they don't care. And the girls have come back caring very much what they smell like and spraying deodorant all over themselves, making the whole classroom unbearable to be in. Russell and I nod and soothe. They sit with him on the couch, and we have dinner in the living room now because it's too painful for him to sit on the kitchen chairs. And after dinner and some TV, they kiss him goodnight and go to their rooms. One night I'm walking down the hall upstairs and I hear Bear crying, but she stops when she hears my footsteps. And when I knock and ask if she's okay, she doesn't answer, pretending she's asleep. I'm Sophie Townsend, with Goodbye to All This, an original podcast from the BBC World Service. Chapter 5. The Crowded Goodbye. It's always hard to sleep well in February. But one night I'm so tired and so deeply asleep, I don't hear Russell get up in the middle of the night, shuffle down the hall. But I hear the fall. I hear him go down, crashing on the tiles. I hear him cry out. I try to drag him up carefully. I can feel his hips and ribs through his skin. I can't get purchase and he keeps slipping from my grasp, but finally I pull him up and get him back into bed. He's crying, and I hold him gently. We don't get back to sleep for hours, both terrified by this fall. I can feel it as we lie together. It signifies another level of chaos, of unmanageability. He's terrified of dying in hospital, wants to stay at home. But what if he can't? What if he falls again and I can't manage? What if he can't use the toilet anymore or walk or breathe? We've had nurses come to the house daily over the past few weeks, helping him shower and dress. But what if that's not enough? The girls get up the next day, get ready for school, kiss their father goodbye. He's managed to get up and to the couch, the bruise on his hip from the fall, covered by the 2 loose pyjama pants he wears. Bye, Dad. I kiss him gently. I take them up to school, walk back, and make him a cup of coffee. He's always made the coffee, right up until today, but this morning he lets me. Russell has never, ever liked the way I made coffee. Too weak, Too milky, he always said. After almost 20 years together, you'd think I'd have got somewhere closer to getting it right, but I haven't. He takes a sip. I love you, he says, but this tastes like shit. He looks at me. His skin is so grey and his body is so thin, and I wonder how it is I haven't noticed before now how very changed he is. How had I not heard that change in his voice, its beautiful register now higher and thinner? How had I not noticed how sad his eyes had become? Russell kisses me on the forehead and touches my knee, squeezes it gently, leans on it to get himself up. He walks slowly to the bed in the dining room and lies on it. I come and put the sheets over him, tucking him in, and I lie down with him for a while, my arm draped over his hip, his poor bruised hip. And I'm glad he goes to sleep so fast. I whisper to him that I'm going to see the mums at coffee, and if he needs me, he just needs to call. His phone's by the bed, but I tell him he should just sleep. Just sleep. He says nothing. And the day goes on. I go to coffee, get back from coffee, make phone calls, answer the door to a friend who wants to visit Russell. I tell them he's sleeping. They leave, not wanting to disturb him. I pick up some groceries, I have lunch. I tidy upstairs, sweeping, not vacuuming, because I don't want to wake him up. I make myself a cup of tea and sit by him as I drink it. He's sleeping deeply still, and I think to myself, as I did this morning, good, he needs his rest. Tonight there's a barbecue at the school to welcome the new families. I've volunteered to help with the sausages. I need to drop off some plates I said I'd bring. But first I have to take the girls to the dentist. I worry that he'll wake and I won't be here, and he'll worry. So I call my friend Vicky, who's driven Russell to chemo and radiotherapy when I couldn't, and who I can't even remember how I know, because her kids left the primary school so long ago. She says she could sit with him just to let him know where I am if he wakes up. I collect the girls from school, take them to their appointment, and when they're done, they tell me they don't want to go home but straight up to the school where their friends are. Barbecue night is always good. I go home. Vicky says he hasn't stirred. We talk a little, quietly, so as not to wake Russell, and I say goodbye. And the house feels very, very quiet. And I look at him and he's still asleep. And something shifts. I start to worry. I call my parents and Mum comes over. She suggests maybe that I call Russell's doctor. I do. I tell him that Russell has now slept all day, and I don't know, is this normal? He asked me about the last 24 hours, and I tell him about Russell's fall the night before. He comes round to the house. He pinches Russell's arm, and then pinches harder. He says to me that Russell isn't asleep. This is a coma. The word coma frightens me, and I say, what do I do now? The doctor says, I think he'll die in the next 24 hours. This weekend, at least. It's brutally matter-of-fact. I remember him telling me then that I should have called earlier. Why did I leave it so long? I remember him asking me why I let Russell get out of bed last night on his own, telling me that I should have helped him. This is why, I remember him saying, he's in a coma now. My mother remembers it differently. Dad comes round and he and Mum go to pick up the kids from the school barbecue. I call the head of the barbecue committee, tell her I won't be there tonight because my husband's going to die. I don't let her answer, I just keep apologising, telling her I feel bad for letting them down because I said I'd bring the vegetarian sausages, and I continue on like this until she says, "It's really all right, it's really fine." That makes me feel like crying. And then I just keep calling. I call Russell's boss. I call his old friends. I call my friends, my brothers. I say to them all, if you want to come and say goodbye, you have to come now and say it. So people do. People walk up the street. There's Vicky and Lisa's husband Richard, and Nicola and Patrick and their kids and Lisa's kids, and my brothers and my sister-in-law and my aunt, and they're crying, and they hug me in the street and walk through the door. And one by one, or in twos, they sit by his bed and they say goodbye. Russell's breath is heavy now, rattling, laboured. I call Russell's best friend Tony, who lives down in Melbourne. He says to me, "I'll come tomorrow first thing. I'll come to say goodbye." Because we still have 24 hours, or maybe even till the end of the weekend, and there'll be a shift here tonight of family and neighbours, and then they'll go and I'll have a night with my darling, and more people will come tomorrow and the next day. The kids come back and I say to them, "Daddy's dying, but it's okay, there's time." They go upstairs and their friends are there. So there's a little tribe of 11-year-olds and 8-year-olds sitting with my girls. Their parents sit downstairs with me and talk. One by one, they sit with Russell and say goodbye, and then return to sit with the rest of us in the living room. My niece is here. She's 4 years old and very curious about death. She sits by Russell's bedside with me and she asks me if it hurts him to be dying. And I tell her no, I don't think so. But I don't know. I don't know. I remember this night in sharp flashes. But I don't remember the full narrative. I don't know what happened when. What happened? When? People sit on the couch, and in my memory there are piles and piles of people on my couch, watching, waiting, and one by one they say goodbye and sit back down on the couch. But they really couldn't possibly have all sat on that couch all together like that. There wasn't enough room. Where were they sitting then? What were they doing? They couldn't have all been silent, all watching, waiting, not speaking. Where was I? Did I stay with him by his bedside? Did I just sit there? Surely I said hello when people arrived. Surely I said something. I remember being held, but I can't remember letting go. But I did let go, and they let go, and then what happened? My niece tapped me on the shoulder, asked me more questions. Her mother, or was it my mother, her grandmother, told her not to bother me, to sit with Grandpa, who would answer any question she had. And my girls, they were upstairs, but then they weren't. When his breathing got worse and when it got so that it looked like pain, I screamed for my children. Although I don't know how they got to be with me on the bed with him, being watched by our friends and our family. And then we collapsed into each other, my girls and I. Something happened to him, and I don't know how it got worse, but it did. And I said, I think, could I have said, I don't know what to do. And did I have him in my arms? Because what did I have of him in my arms? What was I carrying of him? How did I sit on the bed and have him in my arms all at once without hurting him, without twisting his body around? And then Patrick, a man we'd known as our children grew up together, came to us at the bed. Patrick, a doctor. Not Russell's doctor, but a doctor nonetheless. And in that panic and that screaming, because I'm sure we screamed, he held Russell's wrist and said, ever so gently, "He's gone now." And the girls and I wailed with shock. It was shock, as if no one ever had warned us, as if this was the first we'd ever known of it. The rawness of it, that's what I remember. The indignance with which I received this news. The utter disbelief that this could be. Did I hold the children in the same arms I held him? I don't know. I don't know. When did I manage to see those people sitting on the couch crying? Did I turn my back on Russell to watch Patrick in the arms of his wife, Nicola, crying? Did I watch as parents comforted their children, as my mother and father looked on at me and my girls? How did I hold Russell and my girls while I watched the scene in the room next to his bed? How did I somehow take it all in and take in nothing at all? People must be embracing me now, and embracing one another too. And people must be leaving very quietly and saying goodbye. and my children must be with me, but I can't call to mind their faces. And my mother and father and my brothers must be holding me and holding the girls. And Russell's doctor must come and sign a death certificate. And I think he says, I thought it would be this weekend. I told you that. But perhaps he didn't say that at all. People must leave us and the girls must go up to bed. I must kiss them goodnight and visit each of them and tell them that they're loved and that their father will always be here with them, because that is what a mother does. I must ring friends I need to tell, and that must be Russell's best friend's voice on the phone who says, "He's gone already, I missed him." And then I suppose I ring a friend who didn't see his death, but who says she'll come. And she must come, because I remember being helped to get him dressed for the undertaker to come in the morning. And she must hold my hand before she leaves and say something kind, because she always does say something kind. And the house must be quiet, with everyone gone. With Russell gone. But still here until the morning. And I must lie with him one last time. All that must have happened. It can't simply be a movie in my head. I can't have made it all up. But all I have are those snatches. Nothing concrete, no action, reaction, action, reaction. No call and no response. The only thing I see with any clarity at all is a little girl, my niece, climbing the stairs and calling out for Uncle Russell's ghost, and the faces of all those people there with us at the end.
I remember getting to the house at around sunset or twilight.
The door was open. Russell was in bed in the living area. He was barely conscious. There were people all around.
I was standing in the hallway at the bottom of the stairs, and I could look through the doorway into the living room where Russell now had his bed.
Everything felt a bit theatrical, like being a figure in an old Renaissance painting where everyone's gaze kind of led yours towards the bed.
We all knew Russell was going to die within the next few hours, and it was a strange sensation to have him lying in the bed there, looking so terribly ill.
And breathing in this really peculiar way. These deep, deep intakes and then the outrush of breath, and then nothing, this gap before he took another breath.
I do remember seeing Russell up close. He was very gaunt, pale. His eyes were closed, but he seemed like he was in peace.
I went and sat with Russell because I thought I ought to say goodbye.
I cried a lot, held his hand, gave him a kiss.
The youngest of the children went out and collected flowers from the street and the garden, and they'd put them in his hair and they'd put them all around him.
The kids were amazing. They were so tender and loving, and they'd stroke his head and whisper and kiss him, and it was a really wonderful, loving scene.
He was lying in the bed, covered in these little flowers and daisies, and he looked so peaceful.
I just remember enough time had passed for the sun to set completely and for it to be dark outside.
And while I was doing that, I noticed that he had stopped breathing, so I went and got Sophie, and then after that...
There was a sudden, loud cry from Sophie that filled the room and kind of took everyone by surprise.
It was more like a kind of a pain as opposed to a cry. And then they all hugged him, and all these sort of families were just sitting there kind of watching this event unfold.
I don't know if someone actually announced it. There was a bit of silence for a while. Some other people started to cry.
I just think it was as though he felt able to do that because he could see Sophie and the girls were surrounded by lots of love, and he was surrounded by love, and perhaps Russell felt that it was a safe time to go. And after he did die, we stayed around for a little while longer. I can't remember how long. And then we left Soph and her family and walked out into the night.
floats away hungry. Goodbye to All This is produced by me, Sophie Townsend, and Eleanor McDowell. The music has been specially created for the podcast by Jeremy Walmsley. Alan Hall is the executive producer. The consultant story editor from CBC Podcasts is Chris Oake. The BBC World Service podcast editor is John Minnell. It's a Falling Tree production for the BBC World Service.